And with that, let me introduce the Reverend Rafael Cruz. The floor is
yours. It is so great to be here with you, with so many friends. And I'll tell you, as I am traveling America, I am very, very encouraged as to what I am seeing around the country. In spite of all the bad news that we hear, I am extremely encouraged. We are going to take this country back. I also see some new faces here. Glad to welcome these people from California, conservative California, that JP and his daughter that are here. Welcome. Let's keep all the libs there, and we're welcome. Send a memo to your friends that this is good country. We have no state tax. Did you know that? One of the few states that doesn't have a state tax. Well, anyway, for those of you that do not know me, as you can tell by my Bostonian accent, I was not born in this country. I was born in Cuba. Grew up under a very oppressive military dictatorship. And the revolution started in the high schools and the universities. I remember at that time there was this young, charismatic leader talking about hope and change. His name was Fidel Castro. And we all followed him. I became involved in the revolution as a teenager. So a result of that, I was captured, was in prison, was tortured. But by the grace of God, that God that I didn't know, but he knew me, I was able to leave the country legally on a student visa. Came to the University of Texas in late 1957, still thinking that Castro was a good guy. 1959, when Castro took over, at the end of that summer, I went back to Cuba. And did I ever get a shock? Because this same man that had been talking about hope and change was now talking about how the rich were evil, about how they oppressed the poor, and about the need to redistribute the wealth. They began confiscating private property, began attacking freedom of the press, began attacking freedom of religion. Let me give you an idea. Soldiers would come into a kindergarten class and would say to the kids, all right, kids, close your eyes and pray to God for candy. Where's the candy? No candy. All right, close your eyes again and pray to Fidel for candy. And while the kids had their eyes closed, very quietly, those soldiers would place candy on all the desks. You know, we see a lot of religious persecution in America. More clearly, we see a lot of Christian persecution in America. But you need to understand that that is not the objective. That is only the means. You see, communism, Marxism, socialism, don't get caught up in the semantics. It's all the same. It requires that government become your God. And in order for government to become your God, they must destroy the concept of God. That is what's behind this attack on religion that we see today. Anyway, I left Cuba after 3 weeks, never to return again, but so happy to be in the land of the free and the home of the brave. I'm so proud to be an American. This is the greatest country on the face of the earth. Well, I finished my university. 6 years later, I had my own business in oil and gas exploration. And then in the late 70s, I was shocked again when I saw a government in this country begin to institute policies that reminded me of that bearded dictator I had left in Cuba. Some of you may remember the Carter years. 22% interest rates, double-digit inflation, double-digit unemployment, gas rationing. Actually, you had lines around the block to get gasoline. A government so weak in foreign policy that Iran had captured 52 Americans and they held them hostage for 444 days. Well, it was as a result of what I saw in the Carter years that I became involved with an organization called the Religious Roundtable. Religious Roundtable was a Judeo-Christian organization that, together with a sister organization, Moral Majority, we mobilized millions of Christians across America to help elect whom I consider the greatest president since Abraham Lincoln, President Ronald Reagan. So anyway, 1980, my son had just turned 9 years old. Our conversation around the dinner table every day was about why we had to get rid of this progressive socialist Jimmy Carter and replace him with a Christian constitutional conservative like Ronald Reagan. So when my son Ted was 9 years old, he got a dose of conservative politics from a Christian worldview every day for a year. But I'll tell you what really guided Ted's footsteps. He had just turned 13, he was coming into high school, and we introduced him to an organization called the Free Enterprise Institute. So now Ted is 13, he's reading Adam Smith and John Locke and von Mises and Hayek and Montesquieu and Bastiat and Federalist Papers and the Anti-Federalist Papers and Milton Friedman. And if you don't know those authors, you got homework to do. And then this organization creates a group of 5 kids. They call them the Constitutional Corroborators. Ted was one of those 5. They hired a memory expert and taught those 5 kids to memorize the entire U.S. Constitution. For the next 4 years, those 5 kids would go to a luncheon meeting, typically Rotary clubs or Lions clubs or Kiwanis clubs. And while people were having lunch, they would put those 5 easels in the front of the room, and they would write the Constitution by memory on those easels. And then after lunch, give a half-hour patriotic speech on free market economics and the Constitution. During the next 4 years, my son Ted did approximately 80 speeches on free market economics and the Constitution. Before my son left high school, he was passionate about the Constitution. He was passionate about the Declaration, about free markets, about limited government, about the rule of law. And that passion became like fire in his bones. And let me tell you, the reason I know my son Ted Cruz will not compromise his principles in Washington is that fire is as alive today as it was over 30 years ago. You know, basically, we get what we deserve. Don't come around saying, oh, God put Obama in power. No, God didn't put Obama in power. You know, God gets blamed for a lot of things, just like the devil gets blamed for a lot of things that are our responsibility. Yes. God did not put Obama in power. We did by sitting in our rear ends, in our pews, in our churches, singing hallelujah, or in the couches at home watching the idiot box while the country was going down to hell. You know, it was only 2 years ago, I was at a pastor's conference in Ames, Iowa. At this pastor's conference, I heard a statistic that really broke my heart. The statistic said that in the 2012 election, there were 12 million evangelical Christians that were not registered to vote, and another 26 million that didn't vote. That's a total of 38 million evangelical Christians that didn't vote out of a total of 89 million. That's about 40%. Since then, I have talked to a couple of Catholic bishops that tell me that percentages are about the same in the Catholic Church. So it is our fault. It is our fault. As a matter of fact, if you look back at the American Revolution, as a matter of fact, the American Revolution did not start in the 1770s. The American Revolution really started in the 1730s with men like Jonathan Edwards and George Whitefield and others in what was called the First Great Awakening. And the First Great Awakening was the spark that ignited the framers. And you cannot separate the First Great Awakening with the American Revolution. They are intertwined, they're one and the same. But I'll tell you the good news. Just like in the 1700s we had a dual revival, spiritual and political, we are about to see the same thing occur in America. However, if you look at it, who were the people that were at the forefront of these battles? It was preachers. You look at the Declaration of Independence. 27 grievances against King George in the Declaration of Independence. Did you know that each and every one of those grievances were preached from the pulpits of America before they were written on the Declaration? For the 10 years prior to Jefferson writing the Declaration, there was fire in the pulpits of America, calling out King George for the atrocities that the British were perpetrating against the American people. It was preachers. Now, where are those preachers today? The majority of them are hiding behind their pulpits, scared to death of losing their tax exemption, although no church in America has ever lost its tax exemption from talking about politics. Scared to death of not being politically correct. Well, it's about time they become biblically correct instead of politically correct. Scared to death of offending somebody and having people leave the church and consequently income leave the church. I'll tell you what we've seen today. It really started in 1933. In 1933, there was an ominous document signed in the United States. It was called the Humanist Manifesto. One of the principal signers of this Humanist Manifesto was a man by the name of John Dewey, member of the American Communist Party, considered the father of American education. So American education from 1933 on was based on secular humanism by a communist at the helm of it. No wonder we got so much garbage being brainwashed onto our kids. And then we saw an erosion of our values. 1962, Supreme Court banned prayer from schools. There may be some people here that remember when we prayed in school before school started. You certainly remember. Well, the next year, 1963, the Bible was banned from schools. And that one is very interesting. Because did you know that one of the first Bibles printed in America was printed under the auspices of Congress to become the principal textbook in primary schools, high schools, and universities? And it was so for over 150 years. As a matter of fact, closer to 200 years. And in 1963, the Bible was banned from school. Well, let me tell you the worst part of it. In spite of these two abominable decisions, the church remained silent. Their excuse is a political issue. How can you call prayer a political issue? How can you call Bible reading a political issue? But that's exactly what the church did. You know the consequence of that? Teen pregnancy skyrocketed after 1963. It has increased over 535%. So did violent crime. 10 years later, 9 unelected justices of the Supreme Court decided that a baby in the womb did not have that unalienable right to life from our Creator, as stated in the Declaration of Independence, and they legalized abortion. Again, the church remained silent. Same excuse. It's a political issue. The consequence, 58 million babies have been murdered in America through abortion. God help us. Yes. And then we saw June 26th of this year, the Supreme Court rendered an opinion. And let me say very clearly, Supreme Court can only render opinions. They have no authority to make law. They rendered an opinion legalizing homosexual marriage. Now, I'll tell you, that opinion was an affront on the biblical definition of marriage. And I'll tell you, the consequence is the erosion of the traditional family. The family was the first unit that God created. And as the family goes, so goes the nation. But this is really much more than homosexual rights. You know, homosexuals have had civil unions forever. So it's not about homosexuals being together. You look at what happened with Kim Davis in Kentucky. Kim Davis broke no law. As a matter of fact, the state of Kentucky passed a constitutional amendment. It's part of the Constitution of the state of Kentucky stating that marriage is in the state of Kentucky. It's only between a man and a woman. So Kim Davis was obeying the Constitution of the state of Kentucky. In addition to that, Kentucky has also passed a REFA ordinance stating that you must provide for accommodation on the basis of religious beliefs. For example, a Jewish person could not be required to work on the Sabbath because it violates his religious beliefs. A Muslim truck driver could not be required to transport alcohol because it goes against his religious belief. Why single out Christians? I have a photograph in my phone of Kim Davis in shackles, with a chain from ankle to ankle, another chain around her waist, obviously going to handcuffs that are covered by a piece of cloth. I've only seen that with violent criminals. She didn't look very violent to me. But I'll tell you what, we've seen these attacks on religious liberty all across America. My son held a religious freedom rally in Iowa a couple of months ago. There was a couple there, Betty and Dick Odgaard. They had a wedding chapel where they performed weddings and they catered the weddings, provided the flowers and the food, etc. A homosexual couple came wanting to be married. They said, "I'm sorry, we cannot do the ceremony. It violates our religious beliefs." They filed a lawsuit. They have lost their ministry. They've lost everything. But here's the interesting thing. That homosexual couple had been married 3 months before. So it had nothing to do with their getting married. It had everything to do with confronting them so you could put them out of business. We saw it with Melissa Klein in Oregon. A lady and her husband that had a bakery. As a matter of fact, this homosexual was a client of theirs. Had bought bakeries from him, pastries for years. He came one day, "Well, myself and my male companion, we want to get married. We want you to cater our wedding." She said, "I'm sorry, my friend, I cannot do that. You're welcome to buy whatever I have in my store, but I cannot cater your wedding because it violates my religious beliefs." Well, Melissa Klein now is facing a $135,000 fine and possibly lose her business. We had the fire chief in Atlanta, a man that was honored as one of the best fire chiefs in America, had been in the fire department for over 27 years. He wrote a booklet for his Sunday school in his own time. There's a page and a half in that booklet where he talks about the biblical definition of marriage. For that page and a half, he was fired from his job. This is tyranny. And I'll tell you what, it is something that we have to stand. In the city of Houston has a homosexual mayor, a lesbian. Last year they passed an ordinance which was termed the bathroom ordinance. Depending upon how you feel in a particular day, you could walk in any bathroom you wanted. So if a man felt like a woman today, he could walk into the women's bathroom. Let's suppose your daughter was in the bathroom and she objected. That man had the right to sue your daughter for violating his civil rights. This is crazy. And look at all the doors that it opens for sexual assault. Well, 5 pastors took this mayor to task. They needed about 17,000 signatures, a little over 17,000 signatures, to take it to a referendum. They collected over 55,000 signatures among the churches. But the mayor wasn't going to have any of that. She came up with all kinds of technicalities to throw out all those signatures. In response to that, they had no choice but to file a lawsuit demanding a referendum. In retaliation, the mayor subpoenaed all the sermons from these 5 pastors, including all sermon notes, communications, email, letters, anything that had to do with homosexuality or with her. All 5 pastors said, we will not comply, put us in jail. Well, I'll tell you, I remember that when this happened, the next day, my son called his pastor. My son is a member of First Baptist Church in Houston. He called his pastor and said, Pastor Greg, I guess you heard what happened yesterday. Pastor Greg said, yes, Ted, I'm very concerned. And so Ted says, listen, I want to have a pastor's rally tomorrow at 11 o'clock in the morning. And I was calling you to ask if we could use the sanctuary. And the pastor begins to laugh over the phone. And Ted says, why are you laughing? And the pastor says, you know, Ted, about a month ago, I was talking to a group of pastors really concerned about what's happening in America, what's happening in our church. I have 50 pastors coming to my office tomorrow at 10 o'clock to pray for the city and pray for the nation. That only God can do that. So it was already preordained. So Ted joined these 50 pastors at 10 o'clock. They spent an hour on their knees praying. They went down to the sanctuary at 11 o'clock. By this time, there were about 500 people there. And those 50 pastors standing with Ted on the platform, all said in unison, Caesar has no jurisdiction over the pulpit. Well, okay. Someone got the bright idea. Let's start sending Bibles to the mayor. From all over the country, thousands of Bibles began descending upon the mayor's office. And actually, this is a miracle, even the Justice Department said to the mayor that she was beyond her jurisdiction. Well, anyway, the pressure was so great that she rescinded the subpoena. But still, the referendum had not taken place. There was a Supreme Court decision that the referendum had to take place. And then she worded the referendum in such a way that you had to vote yes to reject in other words, to try to vote it to where voters would be confused. So these 5 pastors went back to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court justice last week ruled, no, you have to word the thing to where yes means, yes, we want to get rid of the referendum. Get rid of this ordinance. And just put it in plain language, nothing, that is confusing, but plain language. We vote to repeal this, and a yes is a vote to repeal. That just happened, and that referendum will take place at the end of this month. That is a great victory.
I came to hear you.
I want you to please give a welcome to Representative Vic Ziegler. Great man of God and a great man representing the state of Texas in our legislature. We need more like him. Thank you very much for the service that you're providing to we, the citizens of Texas. You are to be commended. referendum is going to take place at the end of this month. Now let me tell you the other good news. Those pastors have mobilized. They have candidates running for each position in city council, and for the mayor's position, they are going to throw all those people out. Well, let me tell you, these ordinances, you may hear the term SOGI ordinances, S-O-G-I, Sexual Orientation and Gender Identity ordinances. They are occurring everywhere. As a matter of fact, we had one right here in our metroplex in the city of Plano. It occurred just before Christmas. 2 or 3 days before Christmas, they figured nobody's paying attention. So they passed the ordinance through city council in Plano. Well, someone did pay attention and called Pastor David Welch, who was the leader of the Houston Five. He came to Dallas and called a series of pastors, including myself. We got together and mobilized the pastors in Plano to try to get a referendum going. Still hasn't occurred. Still hasn't occurred. But I'll tell you what, the same thing happened in the city of Fayetteville, Arkansas. The pastors got mobilized and defeated the ordinance 52-48. Now let me tell you the sad thing. We're talking about 1.5% of the population that was able to garner 48% of the vote. It should have been 90-10.
Exactly.
And the reason is the same reason I gave you at the beginning of this evening. The majority of Christians are sitting in their rear ends, in their pews, or in their couches watching the idiot box. And we got to become involved. Proverbs 29:2 says, when the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. When the wicked beareth rule, people mourn. If the righteous, the people that uphold the Judeo-Christian principles upon which this country was built, the people that uphold the Constitution, the Declaration, the rule of law, when those people are in authority, we got peace, we got prosperity, we got jobs, people rejoice. When the wicked, those who reject those Judeo-Christian principles upon which this nation was built, those who reject the Constitution and the rule of law, when those people are in authority, we got unemployment, we got chaos, we got crime, we got malaise, people mourn. Very clear. But if the righteous are not running for office, if the righteous are not even voting, what is left? The wicked electing the wicked.
Yes.
And it becomes our fault. It becomes our fault. We must be engaged. We must be engaged. I have been traveling the country. I've done probably over 100 pastors' conferences in the last 2 years. And I'm encouraging every church in America, you need to have a voter registration table in your lobby all the time. All the time. Because if you're not registered to vote, you can't vote. Now let me tell you something else. The battle is the primary. The battle is not the general election. Nothing more than the Republican establishment would want than for a mushy, middle-of-the-road moderate that stands for nothing to be our standard bearer. Look at the last 40 years. Every time we had a middle-of-the-road moderate, we've lost. We lost with Dole, we lost with Gerald Ford, we lost with George H.W. in 92, because in 88, he ran as the third term of Ronald Reagan.
Exactly.
Remember, read my lips? Well, we read his lips and he lied. And he got beat in 92. We lost with McCain. We lost with Romney. If we have another middle-of-the-road, mushy, moderate, like Jeb Bush, Hillary will be our next president, and this country will be destroyed. So I'll tell you, the battle It's not November of 2016. That's too late. The battle is the primary. And I'll tell you what the establishment wants. The establishment wants for us, grassroots conservatives, people of faith, to split. And like little bees, one goes to little flower line, one goes to this other, one goes to this other. If we split, we lose. There's a scripture in Acts chapter 1. When those 120 were in the upper room, it says they were together in one accord. Together in one accord. In Genesis chapter 11, verse 6, Genesis chapter 11 is about these people trying to build the Tower of Babel. And in verse 6, God says, they are of one accord. And therefore, anything they set their minds to do, they can accomplish. Therefore, let us confound their language. Even for evil, there's power of being in one accord. So, what we need to do is we need to coalesce. We need to coalesce. We need to coalesce about, I'll tell you what, we have several good candidates. We have one great candidate that stands heads and shoulders above everyone else. You hear these people that say, oh, we need a manager. Let me tell you, America is in crisis. We do not need crisis management. We need crisis resolution. And that means a leader and a fighter with a proven record. Let me tell you what. For the last 15 years, my son Ted has been at the forefront of every battle. At the forefront of every battle. Even though he's being maligned, and I'll tell you what, I'll take it as a badge of honor. He is not running just against Democrats. He's running against what he calls the Washington cartel. Corrupt career politics in both parties. Whether it is fighting to get rid of Obamacare. Let me tell you what that 22-hour filibuster did. Which, of course, the Republican leadership was screaming, Ted Cruz is going to cost us not being able to get rid of Harry Reid. It's going to cost us to lose seats in the Senate and lose seats in the House. Let me tell you what that filibuster did. It elevated the discourse on Obamacare. It created such a movement against Obamacare that don'tfundit.com had over 2 million people coming to it. Every candidate that won in 2014 ran on defunding Obamacare. And we had the biggest sweep we've had since the 1920s. That's what that filibuster did. It was the catalyst to give us the biggest win we've had in over 80 years. You look at what just happened with defunding Planned Parenthood. Ted was a lonely voice. The only one standing with him was Mike Lee. Everybody else ran for the hills. And we have a criminal organization under investigation committing multiple crimes, butchering babies aborted alive. Even under today's code, that's murder.
Yes.
And the Democrats and most of the Republicans don't want to do anything about it. You see, the problem that we have is that we've had leadership that has no backbone.
Amen.
I tell you, I lost all respect for Mitch McConnell the day of the 2014 election. That after that humongous win, he comes to the microphone and the first words out of his mouth, we will not shut down the government. In other words, he was telescoping to Obama, do whatever you want. We will fold and acquiesce. Everything that has passed are the very same things that Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid would have passed. The Republican leadership stinks. It is as bad as it is about time that we send a loud message to Austin and to Washington that we don't work for them, they work for us. They're supposed to be our servants. Here's the man that understands that. There are few, but there are a lot that don't understand that. They think they are our rulers, when in reality they are our servants. But I'll tell you what. If you look at the second paragraph of the preamble of the Declaration, where it says, we hold these truths to be self-evident, even though to a lot of these politicians they're not self-evident at all.
Exactly.
That all men are created equal, against to many of them, some are more equal than others. That they are endowed, not by government, but by their Creator, with certain unalienable rights, among which are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. By the way, notice that happiness is not an unalienable right. Handouts are not an unalienable right. It's the pursuit of happiness. That means you work your rear end off.
Amen.
And with hard work and perseverance, you can achieve all your dreams. You see, in the book of Proverbs it says, when the righteous falls 7 times, he gets up again. That's what's made America great.
Yes.
When you fall flat on your face, you get up again and you keep moving forward. You see, the worst thing about this handout society that Obama has created, and I realize people are struggling, but you know something, I remember when unemployment was something that people took for a week or 2 weeks while they found another job. Now the Obama administration says, no, be on unemployment for 99 weeks. You don't even have to look for a job, sit around for 2 years watching television while we give you food stamps and pay you rent and everything else. And then after that, we'll find a way to put you on disability. You know, it is, but let me tell you the saddest thing about this concept of dependency is that it kills the dream. One of the greatest things about America is the American dream. That with hard work and perseverance, anyone can achieve their dreams. I see it in my own life. When I came to this country, I didn't have any money, couldn't speak a word of English. And let me tell you, to see my son, when I was sitting on the Senate chambers, seeing my son being sworn in as U.S. Senator, and potentially becoming the next President of the United States of America, all that comes to my mind is only in America. Only in America. Where else can that happen in one generation? Nowhere else. So, what we're doing is we're doing a disservice to these people by keeping them on dependency to the government, because dependency just makes their status permanent. They need more than a handout is a handoff. We need to empower people that are in the lowest economic strata to achieve their dreams.
Yes.
We do that by creating an environment where they can flourish.
Yes.
One of the things that Ted Cruz has said up front, number one, he will get rid, day one, every unconstitutional, unlawful executive amnesty, executive ordinance will be rescinded day one by one of He will cut down taxes and regulations where people can keep more money in their pocket, and government will get out of the way, and you allow the private sector to create millions upon millions of jobs. You know, Ronald Reagan said it very clearly. Government is not the solution. Government is the problem. We don't need more government. We need for government to get out of the way. Ted Cruz wants to go to Washington to cut down the size, power, and scope of the federal government and allow we the people to take control of our lives. It is about time that we the people are the ones that make the decisions about the future of this country. Not the great beers in the back rooms of the Capitol.
Exactly.
Just read the first chapter of Ted's book so you could see all the crooked deals that are being made behind closed doors
Exactly.
to deceive the American people. I'll tell you what. Let me give you the good news. The good news is there are more of us than there are of them. The bad news is that the us have been asleep at the wheel.
That's right.
So we got our marching orders. We got to wake up. And actually, I'm asking you to do more than wake up. I'm asking you to lock arms and let's unite in one accord and coalesce about the person most qualified to be the next president of the United States. Do you know who was the candidate that raised the most money in the last quarter that was reported, which is June 30th? It wasn't Jeb Bush, it was Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz raised $14.3 million. The second one was Jeb Bush with $11 million. Now here's the difference. Ted Cruz $14.3 million came from over 175,000 donations. Average donation, $81. Jeb Bush, $11 million. Average donation was over $900. That translates to about 12,000 donations. Lots of grassroots with Ted, zero grassroots with Jeb Bush. Let's drill down on those numbers. Over 95% of Ted's donations were $100 or less. In the case of Jeb Bush, less than 3% were $200 or less. Now, in terms of super PACs, the only super PAC that has raised more money than Ted is Jeb Bush, that's raised a little over $100 million. As of June 30th, Ted Cruz Super PAC had over $38 million. Nobody else comes close. But let me tell you huge news that some of you may not know. David Barton has just taken over the Ted Cruz Super PAC. David Barton is one of the most respected evangelicals in America. A man of integrity, a man of honor, a man that you can be sure that the ads will be positive, will be on target. You can be sure there will not be a single ad throwing mud at anybody else. As a matter of fact, my son Ted has not said one bad word against the character of any of the people running, and he will not do so. He's made a commitment that he will run a positive campaign, he'll stay on issue, and if we all coalesce, Ted will be the next president of the United States. He just announced yesterday, he already has a chairman, a county chair, in every county in the first 4 states. That's Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, and Nevada. He has organizations on the ground on all the states that are playing on on March 1st. He already has an organization on the ground in about 30 states. No one else has that kind of organization. And I'll tell you what, it is grassroots. As of now, there are well in excess of 350,000 people that have come to tedcruz.org to donate. To give you an idea, after the first debate, in the first 100 hours, over $1 million came to his website unsolicited. After the second debate, it only took 48 hours to have over $1 million come unsolicited. If we coalesce about the candidate that is truly a man of the people, that wants to restore power to we the people, that's Ted Cruz. Thank you. God bless you. God bless America. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. Yes, sir.
I want to ask you a question about our next problem. You're absolutely right about tyranny and all that. Let me say I love your son. He's absolutely my favorite son. I want to ask you about the next problem we have, which we have to discuss, which is Islam.
Yes.
And how is it we manage as a country with freedom of religion? How do we manage to deal with the violence that comes from Islam in our country? For example, Japan, as I've read, you know this, Sharia law, Islam is actually illegal in Japan, from what I understand.
Well, let me
What about that in our country?
let me say this. We got a couple of problems that we need to tackle right away. One of them is our president
Yes.
wants to bring 200,000 refugees from Syria without even doing any background checks. Even his experts, even the administration's experts, say in all probability they're going to be ISIS terrorists among them, they're going to be Al-Qaeda terrorists among them, but they still bend in bringing those 200,000 people. Let me tell you, if there's one terrorist among them, we can't let those people in. I mean, why don't the countries in the Middle East take it?
Exactly.
I mean, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, they got plenty of money, they got plenty of space, they got plenty of open area. But I'll tell you what, it is really a matter of national security to bring refugees that have not been vetted. In the first place, I don't know how you will do appropriate background checks, but they don't even plan to do any. And you know they are going to be terrorists among them. We have the same problem in our southern border. The gate is wide open. That means you not only have illegals coming looking for jobs, you got drugs coming across the border, you got drug cartels, you got gangs. Did you know that in the city of Los Angeles alone there are over 300 gangs from illegals from Central America? And it would be naive to think that there wouldn't be terrorists almost crossing across the border when the gate is wide open. And then you hear all these things, well, the guard is there. The guard has no authority to apprehend. As a matter of fact, an illegal walks to a guard, all they can do is take it to the INS, and the INS is going to bust them around the country and just let them disperse among the population. That is a huge problem, and it is a problem of national security.
How philosophically do we, as a country with a constitution that you know well, that allows freedom of religious expression, I mean, it's philosophical.
Well, let me say this. Freedom of religion is one thing, but when you come to Sharia law, Sharia law now is something that is contrary to the U.S. Constitution. And let me tell you, back when Ted was Solicitor General, Ted defended a case at the Supreme Court called Medellin versus Texas. In that case, Ted was fighting against the World Court, the judicial arm of the United Nations, 90 individual nations, and the President of the United States of America. And he won that case on the basis that foreign courts have no jurisdiction over American courts. So a foreign code of law has no jurisdiction over American courts. And we just need to apply the law. And it's just a matter of, you know, we got laws in the book to take care of illegal immigration. If we just follow the Constitution and follow the law, we'll be okay. But we got a president that tramples on the Constitution, tramples on the Declaration, tramples on the rule of law, tramples on separation of powers. A president that said, well, I got a pen and a phone,
Yes.
and if you don't act, I'll act unilaterally. So I'll tell you what, and we can't even prosecute anybody because the Justice Department has nothing to do with justice. The fox is inside the hen house. So we have total lawlessness in America.
Yes.
But let me tell you the good news. January 20th of 2017 is coming. Now, I'll tell you what, it's going to be a tough 15 or 16 months because this man is doubling down, he's accelerating his pace, but look what's happening in the House now. It's not encouraging. It's not encouraging that we have Boehner for pressure from conservatives, acquiesced, and then the guy that he handpicked didn't take 2 weeks to say, I can't do it. And I hope the pressure from the conservatives stay, and we get a speaker that has a backbone.
Amen.
That would be right.
So, I think there's hope for America, and as I say, if each and every one of us, if we the people get involved, we can take this country back.
Exactly.